Welcome back, guys. Now in this video let's discuss about posterior pituitary. Okay, see, the posterior pituitary is also called as neurohypophysis because it is developed from the neuroectoderm. Okay, the posterior pituitary. Yeah. See, the basic point which I want you to know is hypothalamus, it is in connection with the anterior pituitary. How means with the help of blood vessels. Okay, there is something called as hypothalamo-hypophyseal portal system. Okay, so hypothalamo-hypophyseal portal system, it's a network of blood vessels. It's a network of blood vessels which are communicating between the hypothalamus as well as the anterior pituitary. We all know, right? From the hypothalamus, different hormones are getting produced: growth hormone, releasing hormone, corticotropic releasing hormone, thyrotropin releasing hormone. Okay, all those releasing hormones are coming to the anterior pituitary, but how? How they are coming? Via the blood vessels. Those blood vessels are called as hypothalamo-hypophyseal portal blood vessels or hypothalamo-hypophyseal portal system. Why I am calling it as hypophysis? Hypophysis is nothing but the pituitary gland. So hypothalamo for hypothalamus, hypophyseal means anterior pituitary. Okay, so the anterior pituitary is also called as adenohypophysis. Okay, so hypophyseal means nothing but the pituitary gland. So hypothalamo, hypophyseal, portal system is nothing but the blood vessels. So the releasing hormones are coming from the hypothalamus to the anterior pituitary via the blood vessels. Okay, done. Now the second point is, say the hypothalamus, yes, it is in communication. Okay, it is in communication with the posterior pituitary also, but not via the blood vessels, Via direct neuronal extensions. See, these are the neurons. See, this is a place where the neuronal cell bodies are present. These cell bodies are called as a nuclei, we all know. Okay, the collection of neuronal cell bodies in the central nervous system are called as nuclei. See, in the hypothalamus, how many nuclei are there? Two important nuclei are there. Okay, there are many other nuclei, but two important nuclei which are called as the paraventricular nucleus as well as the supraoptic nucleus. See, here is the paraventricular nucleus. What are present here? Cell bodies. This is the supraoptic nucleus. What are present here? Cell bodies. Now every neuron is having a cell body as well as axon. Now here are the cell bodies present. But where are their axons? So see, these axons. Now these axons are coming down. Okay, the axons are coming down. Now these axons are coming down directly to the posterior pituitary. See, these axons are coming down. Axons have nerve terminals. Okay, nerve terminals. Now the axonal nerve terminals are coming down to the posterior pituitary. Okay, so what happens is, see here. Okay, in the supraoptic nucleus, in the paraventricular nucleus, there the there the hormones are produced. Which hormones? The supraoptic nucleus produces the antidiuretic hormone or vasopressin. The paraventricular nucleus produces the oxytocin. So now these hormones are produced in the hypothalamus, in the vesicles. Those hormones are packed into the vesicles, and now those vesicles, they will come down via this neuronal axons, and now those vesicles are waiting in the nerve terminals. In the nerve terminals, those vesicles are waiting. Now vesicles are containing antidiuretic hormone ADH and oxytocin. Okay, now point is how the hypothalamus is in communication with the posterior pituitary. It's not because of the blood vessels. The hormones from the hypothalamus are not coming to the posterior pituitary via the blood vessels. It's not the hypothalamo-hypophyseal portal system. These hypophyseal tracts. These are the neurons, right? They are coming down. So if any axon, if it is coming down, moving up or moving down, they are called as the tracts. So hypothalamus is in communication with the posterior pituitary with the help of hypothalamo-hypophyseal tracts. Now these tracts are carrying the hormones. Now these hormones are waiting where? Now these hormones are waiting in the nerve terminals in the vesicles. Okay, done. Now let's talk some important points about the oxytocin. Now oxytocin is also called as a love hormone. Okay, it's also called as a love hormone, which is very much important for the proper build-up of the emotions. Now oxytocin. Now from where this oxytocin is getting produced? You see, usually students will confuse. They will say, sir, oxytocin is produced from the posterior pituitary. No, oxytocin is produced from the hypothalamus. From which nucleus? From the paraventricular nucleus. Okay, so try to understand like this. Have a mnemonic, SOAP. So this is the mnemonic which we use constantly. So S for supraoptic nucleus. Supraoptic nucleus produces antidiuretic hormone and paraventricular nucleus produces oxytocin. Okay, never ever confuse something like, supraoptic nucleus produces oxytocin. Don't confuse like that. Supraoptic nucleus produces antidiuretic hormone. Paraventricular nucleus produces oxytocin. Okay, now oxytocin, yes, it is produced from the paraventricular nucleus. Now what is the function of this oxytocin? Say oxytocin, it will cause the contraction of the uterus, helps in the development, helps in the baby movement during the labor, helps in kicking the baby out of the uterus during the labor. So uterine contractions. Okay. Now not only that, see this oxytocin, whenever the baby is sucking, okay, whenever the baby is sucking the nipple, the oxytocin is going to be released. Now this oxytocin from the posterior pituitary, it will cause contraction of the alveolar smooth muscle, so that the alveolus is going to be contracted, so that the milk let out will happen. Okay, the milk is going to eject out. That is called as a milk let out reflex. So milk ejection are also called as a galactokinesis. Galactokinesis. So galactopoiesis is under the control of prolactin. Okay, galactopoiesis is under the control of prolactin. But galactokinesis, if they use the word kinesis, kinesis means movement. Which movement? Galacto, milk movement. So milk let out is under the control of oxytocin. Okay. Now not only that, this oxytocin can be used for other purposes also. Okay. Now oxytocin is used to prevent the postpartum hemorrhage, first of all. Okay, usually in the clinic, when you deliver the baby, normal vaginal delivery, okay, you have done the normal vaginal delivery. Now, after normal vaginal delivery, to prevent hemorrhage, excessive hemorrhage, you can give this oxytocin. Okay, usually in the third stage of labor, active management, we call something like, active management of third stage of labor. In this active management of third stage of labor, we usually give the shot of oxytocin. Why oxytocin? Why? Because oxytocin causes the contraction of the uterus. So contracting the uterus will actually decrease the bleeding. Okay, that's a prevention of postpartum hemorrhage. But for example, right now there is active postpartum hemorrhage. Right now the female is bleeding. Okay, right now the female is bleeding. Now what actually you can do is, you can give a shot of oxytocin, again the same oxytocin, intramuscular injection. If you give oxytocin, the oxytocin will go and cause the contraction of the bladder, and the bleeding, the blood vessels, okay, will be ligated away. Okay, usually we can say something like this. Okay, if a female, okay, if delivers a baby, okay, a female delivers a baby. Now after delivering the baby, we usually say something like, give the baby to the mother now as fast as possible, so that a mother will start like breastfeeding. Okay, why? This is very beneficial. Okay, so after delivering the baby, we just clean the baby and give the baby to the mother. Okay, immediately. Why? Why? Because see, now this baby is going to suck the breast. Now whenever there is breast sucking, what happens? Now oxytocin is going to be released in the mother. Now this natural oxytocin, yes, it will help in letting out the milk. Okay, it will help in movement of the milk. Not only that, this oxytocin will also cause uterine contractions. So those uterine contractions will actually prevent the bleeding from the uterus. Okay, so oxytocin, yes, it stops the postpartum hemorrhage. It decreases the bleeding. Now for breast engorgement. Now breast engorgement means milk is not coming out. Okay, now she is having very painful breast, tender breasts are there. Now what we can do is, we can take out the milk out. How we can do that? Same drug, oxytocin. So oxytocin is also the drug of choice for breast engorgement. And for induction of labor, what is induction of labor? See, we are just kick-starting the labor. When you are supposed to start the labor, for example, if it's not happening by its own, now she is going into term, 37 weeks, 38 weeks, 39 weeks, but still she is not going into the labor. Now, okay, and also you are doing the scans in which you can clearly see oligohydramnios. Now, the amount of the amniotic fluid, okay, the amount of amniotic fluid is going down. Okay, usually with the time, amniotic fluid levels will decrease. Now, that's not good for the baby. Okay, now it's not good for the baby. So, now she is in term, she is not going to the labor. Now, what you need to do as a doctor, you need to kick-start the labor. Okay, you have to start the labor. That's the induction of labor. So, for the induction of labor, again the same drug, the drug of choice is oxytocin. Okay, done. Now after this, let's discuss about the second important hormone from the posterior pituitary, that is the antidiuretic hormone or vasopressin. Okay, antidiuretic hormone, which is also called as vasopressin. Now what is this antidiuretic hormone? Yes, we have seen again this in renal also, antidiuretic hormone, antidiuresis, no urination. Same, the example which I have given over there. See, whenever you got misplaced in a desert, okay, whenever you got misplaced in a desert, now you are just simply roaming in the desert for the next 24 hours, you are getting dehydrated, you are losing the fluids out of your body. Now that's not the time to actually produce, okay, that's not the time to actually produce a dilated urine, okay, diluted urine I should say, okay, diluted urine. You are supposed to conserve as much water as possible, okay, that's not the time to lose the water in the form of urine, okay. So that time antidiuretic hormone is produced, okay, when your blood is getting concentrated, you are losing the fluids, when your blood is getting concentrated, when you are having hyperosmolarity in your blood, that will stimulate the release of antidiuretic hormone. Now this antidiuretic hormone decreases the urination. Okay, we all know. So vasopressin or antidiuretic hormone, yes, it is produced from the supraoptic nucleus, and what it does, it decreases the amount of urine production. Urine volume is going to be decreased, and where it is going to be stored, see, now the vesicles which are storing this antidiuretic hormone, those vesicles are called as Herring bodies. Okay, Herring bodies are the vesicles in which this antidiuretic hormone is present. And also let's discuss some important functions of the antidiuretic hormone. Okay, now this antidiuretic hormone, it not only helps in decreasing the urination, Antidiuretic hormone have different receptors, and the actions of the antidiuretic hormone also a little different. We will see that in this slide. Now, first of all, how many receptors are there for the antidiuretic hormone? Okay, 3 receptors are there. See, V1, V2, V3 receptors. V1, V2, simple, in a simple way, V1, V2, V3. Now, V1 is also called as V1A. Okay, V1 is also called as V1A, and V3 is also called as V1B. So, V1A, V2, V1B. Or in a simple way, V1, V2, V3. Simple. So, 3 receptors are there. Now, where they are present? See, now V1A receptors are present on the blood vessels. Okay, V1A receptors are present on the blood vessels. Now, if vasopressin are the antidiuretic hormone, if the antidiuretic hormone acts on this V1, okay, if antidiuretic hormone acts on V1 receptors, what will happen? Now, there will be vasoconstriction. That's why we call this name vasopressin. Antidiuretic hormone vasopressin, it causes constriction of the blood vessels. Okay, so on the blood vessels, I should say on the smooth muscles of the blood vessels. Blood vessels are having the smooth muscle, right? Now, on the smooth muscles, V1A receptors are present or V1 receptors are present. When you stimulate this V1 receptors, yes, there is vasoconstriction. Okay, not only that, these V1A receptors are also present in the liver. Okay, in the liver, and when you stimulate this V1 receptors, there will be glycogenolysis. All the glycogen whatever is stored, that will be broken down, glycogenolysis. Okay, this is a small minor function. V1A stimulation will cause glycogenolysis in the liver. Done. Now, very important function, very important function of out of all these 3 is V2 receptors. Now, these V2 receptors are present where? So, these V2 receptors are present in the last part of the nephron, that is the distal convoluted tubule. Not exactly on the distal convoluted tubule, I should say. The V2 receptors are present on the collecting ducts. Okay, collecting ducts. Now, the V2 receptors, yes, they are present on the collecting ducts. Now, let me show you. See, here is a collecting duct. Now, these collecting ducts are having which cells? These are the principal cells. These cells are called as the principal cells. Now, collecting duct have cells called as principal cells as well as intercalated cells. Now, here is the antidiuretic hormone. Now, this is the antidiuretic hormone. Now, antidiuretic hormone is going to act on which receptors? V2 receptors. Okay, this receptor which I am showing you, this blue color receptor is a V2 receptor. Okay, now fluid is coming like this. This is all the urine. This is all the urine going down like this. Okay, in this way. Now, see, this is the antidiuretic hormone. Okay, antidiuretic hormone is going to act on which receptor? Antidiuretic hormone is going to act on the V2 receptor. So, stimulation of this V2 receptor, what happened? Now, when the V2 receptors are stimulated, now in this condition, now what happens is this water, see, now this water will be reabsorbed with the help of these channels, water channels. Okay, now again I am repeating. Now, the V2 receptors, where they are present? V2 receptors are present on the collecting ducts. Okay, sir, well and good. Now, when the antidiuretic hormone acts on these V2 receptors, what happens? See, water reabsorption will happen. Water reabsorption happen. When you stimulate the V2 receptors, now these water channels are newly produced and placed over there. Now, these water channels are called as the aquaporin 2 channels. Okay, so when you stimulate the V2 receptors, now these aquaporin 2 channels are incorporated in the luminal membrane. This is the luminal membrane, right? So, in the luminal membrane, these aquaporin 2 channels are incorporated. So, now with the help of these aquaporin 2 channels, water is reabsorbed. Okay, water is reabsorbed. Okay, so V2 receptors, where they are present? On the collecting ducts. On the collecting ducts, with the help of aquaporin 2 channels, water reabsorption, solute-free water reabsorption or facultative water reabsorption will happen. Okay, see, we have discussed about this in detail in the renal physiology also. But anyway, now V2 receptors, where else they are present? So, the V2 receptors are also present on the vascular endothelium. Okay, vascular endothelium. Okay, important point. See, previously we have discussed about what? See, these are the blood vessels. On the smooth muscles of the blood vessels. On the smooth muscles of the blood vessels, there are these V1A receptors. True. But a V2 receptor is present on the vascular endothelium. Endothelium is the lining inside the blood vessel. The lining inside the blood vessel. Now, on this on this endothelial cells, there are V2 receptors present. Now, if you stimulate these V2 receptors, these endothelial cells will start to produce start to release the von Willebrand's factor. Okay, they will release von Willebrand's factor. Now, what von Willebrand factor will do? Von Willebrand factor helps in platelet adhesion, platelet aggregation or clot formation. So, yes, for the release of von Willebrand factor also, yes, you need the V2 receptor stimulation, where the V2 receptors are present on the endothelial cells. Okay, see, V1A receptors, if you stimulate the V1A receptors on the blood vessels, yes, there is vasoconstriction. But one little minor detail point is, see, these V2 receptors are present on the vascular smooth muscles. Okay, V2 receptors are present on the vascular smooth muscles. When you stimulate this V2, the receptors on the vascular smooth muscles, there will be vasodilation. Okay, yes, I'm going to ask you, usually a student will know this thing. So, antidiuretic hormone is also called as vasopressin. Vasopressin is going to cause contraction of the blood vessels. Okay, that's why vasopressin, usually vasoconstriction. See, yes, V1 stimulation, V1 receptor stimulation will cause vasoconstriction, but remember, the V2 receptors which are present on the vascular smooth muscle cells can also be stimulated with the help of this vasopressin. Now whenever you stimulate the V2 receptors, that will cause actually vasodilation. So at the end of the day, both V1 receptors are present on the vascular smooth muscles as well as V2 receptors are present on the vascular smooth muscles. So whether vasoconstriction happen or vasodilation happens depends on the concentration of these receptors. If more V1 receptors are present, vasoconstriction will happen. If more V2 receptors are present, vasodilation will happen. Okay. Anyway, now this V1B receptors, which are also called as V3 receptors, which are present in the anterior pituitary. Okay, anterior pituitary. Now this V3 receptors are stimulated. If you stimulate the V3 receptors, now this anterior pituitary is going to produce the ACTH. Okay. Now V3 receptors, simple V3 receptors are present in the anterior pituitary. Stimulation of this V3 receptors helps in production of ACTH, that is adrenocorticotropic hormone. What adrenocorticotropic hormone will do? It helps in production of cortisol. Simple. So with this, we are done with the important hormones from the posterior pituitary, that is the antidiuretic hormone as well as oxytocin. Hope the video is helpful. Thank you.